And thank you all who provided the food. It's absolutely wonderful. Athena, that's mine. Too. Okay.
Mary, make them do a survey.
Oh, I know. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Czar. I'm the executive director here at the Boca Raton Historical Society and the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum. We're so pleased to have you all here, and please take a minute and look at our new exhibits. We're very proud of them, and just immerse yourself in Boca Raton's history. Before I turn this over to Athena Gunas, our wonderful board member who set this up, I do want to do a couple of housekeeping things. This type of talk is very typical of what we do here. And most of our talks are about local history, but they're always about history. And we're looking forward to learning a little bit about Afghanistan tonight. So tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, we have a town hall tea time, which is going to feature author Sally Ling, who writes books about Boca Raton. And these quilts are the quilts she made that are for sale. But one of her characters in her books is a quilt maker, a quilt store owner, I guess. Anyway, it all comes together tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. And then we have a town hall talk in the evening on December 1st. And the speaker that evening is archaeologist Bob Carr, who is the archaeologist in the state of Florida. He's done some major explorations here, the Miami Circle, and some other things in South Florida, but he also did recently our Ocean Strand property in Boca Raton, and there will be some artifacts on display, and he will talk about that quote dig or whatever, this investigation, and other things that he's discovered. So this is going to be an evening of our Native American type history and that kind of thing. It'll be fun. And then Sue, what's the next one?
December 14th.
Okay, December 14th. We're going to have a talk about the Second Seminole War in Florida. So if you don't know anything about that, you need to learn it because it was an important time in Florida. And Sue's going to do it along with somebody else. So, but anyway, we do have these talks going on throughout the year. And please just stay in touch with us through bocahistory.org, our website. But we're so happy to have you here. In your seats, you have information on becoming a member of the Boca Raton Historical Society, and we welcome all of you, especially those who live right here and have raised families here. We are Boca Raton's history right here, and we welcome you with open arms. So please think about becoming a member. It's not very expensive. And secondly, we have a survey. Everybody says, I don't want to fill out a survey, but these surveys, we are required to do these surveys by the county, because we receive quite a bit of money from the county every year for marketing, and this is really important for us. So if you don't mind just filling out the survey, we'd really appreciate it. And one more thing.
Thank you to the whole.
Oh, of course. We want to thank you all for coming and for bringing this wonderful food and this wonderful speaker, which we can't wait to hear, and just coming. We just love having you all, and please acquaint yourself with the museum and become a member and become part of us. So thank you very much. And now Athena Gunas is a wonderful new board member here, and so we're so excited.
Thank you, Mary. So I wrote something down, because if I speak offhand, it's going to be an hour. Excuse me, Mujib, I can't control myself. Thank you, Mary. So good evening and welcome. I would like to thank the Boca Raton Historical Society and the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum for hosting this wonderful event tonight. I would also like to thank the Hellenic Cultural Society of South Florida for sponsoring tonight's delicious hors d'oeuvres, especially Stavrula's spanakopita. We have lucumia, we have pura vieres. So if you haven't had Greek food, dig in. If you had, dig in. So we're here because of Mujib. So I met Mujib Mehrdad, his wife Aria, and their daughter Ada through Florida Atlantic University, where he recently gave an electric poetry reading. Afterwards, I spoke with Mary and Olivia, and I told them that we need to bring him here. So we're very happy to have you and your family here tonight, Mujib. So Mujib Mehrdad is an acclaimed Afghan poet, writer, translator, and journalist who specializes in English literature and cultural studies. His books of poetry, Gladiators Are Still Dying, won the 2007 Afghan Civil Society's Literature Contest. In 2021, Mehrdad's most recent collection of poetry, Dolphin's Alley, won the prestigious Ahmad Shamlou Poetry Award for Best Collection of the Year in Tehran, Iran. In addition, Mehrdad has also held international residencies, including in the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa, and is currently the resident poet for FAU's Fall 2022 semester. Mehrdad has used his scholarship, writing, and community engagement work, to advance progressive ideals in Afghanistan, including promoting women's rights and fighting against human rights abuses. Like many Afghans, Mehrdad became a target of the Taliban when the Afghan government fell during the US withdrawal from the country in August 2021. He and his family were forced to leave the country for their safety. Tonight, Mujib, we are very honored to have you and your family with us tonight. Please.
Thank you so much, Atena, for your kind introduction. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm coming from a very far away country, previously famous for its long period of war. Unfortunately, at August 2021, our state collapsed very dramatically, and it was another sad chapter in our history. And it says, this collapse teaches us that how fragile the states are, especially in places like Middle East, and how fragile the young democracies are. Afghanistan in last 20 years was a success story in US foreign policy. We had the most free press in the whole region. Our media was more free, and in international rankings, we were better than India. Maybe it is very, very difficult to accept, but we were better than India, and we were a role model for our neighboring countries because we were surrounded by some of the most despotic regimes like China, Islamic Republic of Iran, Central Asian countries. They're all dictatorships. And Afghanistan was a vivid young democracy, which we were experiencing freedom of speech, freedom of women. The women in Afghanistan were challenging the warlords in their constituencies. They were going to the provinces, winning the elections, doing campaigns, contesting with very strong men and defeating them. And 27% of the parliament was women. In education system, we had a huge presence of women. We had very successful cabinet members. There were women in sport, in art, in culture. Everywhere we were witnessing a vivid, young, and growing democracy. But unfortunately, on 15th of August, due to many reasons, our allies left us alone. And unfortunately, that tragic collapse happened, and thousands of our people fled the country because they were labeled as allies of America and European countries, and the Taliban took over. And as you know, Taliban are terrorist groups, and They have a long history of the most brutal behavior towards even Afghan people, not only Afghan people, but towards all the things that they consider as foreigner, from democracy to freedom of speech to human rights. They're all considered as foreign and infidel values and Islamic values. That is why for people like me, like my family, because my sisters were part of uh, women rights activism in Kabul, they were not wearing scarves in Kabul city. So they were part of all protests for women rights in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, uh, thousands of educated Afghans were forced to flee the country because they were subjected to the most brutal behaviors. The people who left behind are facing extrajudicial killings, violence, prison. So now Afghanistan, from a success story, turns into a tragedy in a blink of eye. And I don't know how sad it is that Afghanistan was an achievement not only for Afghans, but for all international community. But suddenly we were left alone. We found ourselves alone, and we left to the mercy of one of the most brutal groups in the whole region. That is why, but by coming to US, it's not my first time. It's my second time. First, I was in 2014. I came to Iowa University to participate in a 3 months fellowship, and then I returned back to my country because I had a hope to be part of the big change in my country, to be agent of change. I was teaching in university. In a university, I was a spokesperson for the Ministry of Education. I was a political activist. So I was feeling that I'm very useful in my country. Why I should not return back to Afghanistan? So I returned back to Afghanistan, and from 2014 till the collapse, I was very active. For last 2 years, I was editor-in-chief of the largest newspaper in Afghanistan. I was challenging the government on the basis of our interrogative reports. The ministers have been dismissed of their jobs. So we were doing a great job. My wife, Arya, was a doctor. She was working in a hospital. So it is not, it is story of a nation. We are only two individuals, but like millions of people are living there, and they were doing their job. But unfortunately, now we don't have a government. Actually, it's a total political administrational vacuum. The Taliban, they are an insurgency group. They are a terrorist group. They don't know how to govern. They don't know what the bureaucracy is. It is like a parody of a government, because all the cabinet ministers are clergies, religious clergies, mullahs, fundamentalists, They are Minister of Foreign Affairs, Health, Education. All of the administrations are led by mullahs, and it's very sad, because in last 20 years, some of our cabinet members were graduated from US, Europe, and other countries. They were very educated people. They were trying to change the destiny of our nation. But unfortunately, we all fell together. We Afghans with our international allies. So it is another story. Uh, I don't want to focus on it anymore. But when I came to US, as far as I go, as I meet many people very different from my culture, we consider that difference. We say, okay, we are very different because we live in Afghanistan, you're living in Greece, you're in Europe, you're living in America. But when we come close together, we start sharing our stories, our ambitions, our dreams, you come to this understanding that those boundaries that politicians are trying to build between nations and people is not very genuine, not very original. You see people in all over the world, they have similar desires, similar dreams. They want to live peacefully in harmony with others, communities within their communities. They're in search of prosperous life and future, uh, and the differences are not that big. Even uh, I think those differences are a source of beauty for me. For example, I'm enjoying from all the cultural aspects of a liberal democracy, very sophisticated society like America. And we share lots of things because in my country, I'm also an advocate of democratic values, human rights, women rights, and we also want to have we have to choose, we have to have the right to choose how to live and what to choose. But unfortunately, we are now immigrant, we are confused. It is like, how to explain it? It is like suddenly you find yourself in the middle of a sea, a storm, and you don't know where to go, what to do. It's like a forced immigration because we had a life there, we had everything. We were enjoying our life in our home with relatives, with tastes of our foods and fruits and places. But now we are like disconnected suddenly from all of those blessings. But there are new blessings, meeting new people, new cultures. Maybe there is a reason for this as well. So, because I'm coming from a country like Afghanistan, my poetry is uh, very social. You know, it's like even if I was in Afghanistan, I was connected with all parts of the world through literature and art. I think art is the international language. I mean, when you see these beauties, you suddenly connect yourself, and you don't need any translator to see paintings, to read, to see sculptures, to see many aspects of visual arts. Of course, in poetry, you need translation. For example, I was familiar with Kazantzakis, Ioannis Ritsus when I was in Kabul, with Garcia Lorca, with many wonderful poets and novelists of all over the world, European, Asian, Middle Eastern, Latin American, great poets and writers. Uh, I was familiar with them in Kabul, and there were thousands of people who were enjoying world literature in Kabul, writers, journalists like me. So we were already connected in a beautiful way with the rest of the world by means of art and literature. So that is why, for me, like being in America, being in Europe, it is not a, of course, you miss your family, relatives, your city, but at the same time, it is not very unfamiliar thing. So I will start by reading some of my poems. I hope you like it. Hungry nation, who likes to plant mine? Who likes to plant mine in their father's land? I know how to bury potato in the soft soil, and my fathers learned this skill from their fathers. Who likes to wail like a dog under the most starry skies? There is no one who cannot whisper a local song. I want to sleep on rooftops at night. I want to stare at stars. I'm afraid the little hot stars might suddenly drop down on my face. We now carry coffins every day, and our sons' backs will also bend under this heavy burden. We are a hungry nation who shoot one another from behind fruit trees. We are a hungry nation who plant mine in fertile lands. This poem is very much under the influence of Garcia Lorca style, if the friends are familiar with his works. Who remembers the heart of the winds? They patrol the streets like wind, but no one sees them. Who has seen the wind on the wind's face? Who among us has not heard the wail of the wind? Small fragments of pavement, untroubled by snow, rain, weight of iron and us. Who among us has not escaped from snow, rain, and the weight or iron? Children whose inception take place in feminine wombs, and whose little hearts feel the pressure of bonds in the arm of malnourished mothers. Who has seen the mother of the wind? Who hasn't heard the wail of the wind? Present at crime scene, like the warm drops of blood, present in all explosions, amongst the dead, amongst the living, with their two little hands, they can only press on two of their wounds. Who has seen the wounds of the wind? Who hasn't heard the lament of the wind? Hearts so little, brains so crystal clear, which have been forgotten on the streets of Kabul. Who remembers the heart of the winds? I am a war poet. I heard the gunfire of 1,000 soldiers. I was wounded like a soldier, and witnessed the shattered skull of my playmate like a soldier. Like a soldier, my land and my gardens were captured by the enemy. I have not been in any trench, yet my home was surrounded by trenches. I was not a soldier, yet I have retreated, I have fled, I have been tortured with soldiers. How come I have not been a soldier? See my wounded belly, see my ruined home, see my tearful poetry. I am a war poet because my mother has given birth to me in a damp cave in absence of light, like a reptile. I'm sorry because my poetry is not very happy. Sometimes I'm annoyed by my poetry as well. But I believe in honesty. I think in arts you have to be honest. I mean, you cannot write poetry about the Mars when you're living in Afghanistan. So if you write it, it's not honest. What does war have but trembling bodies returning from foggy roads? What has it got but wide, useless meadows, a home shadowed forever by a cloud, or the permanent silence of birds on balconies? The one lying in a grave stripped of sight was not blinded by the flash of medals. What does war have but a sun rising to rocks and fields and sitting inside a grave? What has war got but trenches seized with shouts, trenches seized with tearful eyes, eternally robbed of color? What has it got but captured trenches? The Street of Dolphins is actually the poem and from my last recent collection, which brought me the Ahmad Shamlou Prize in Iran, uh, because we speak the same language in Iran, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. We speak Farsi. There are lots different languages within three countries, but I'm a Farsi speaker, Persian speaker, so the Iranians are also speaking the dominant languages Farsi. So I contested, I sent my book collection, and it won the award, which is like, we can say it like Pulitzer of Farsi. It is very prestigious. So this poem was one of the reasons that I won that award. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, let me give you a little background. Maybe it will make it more interesting. 2 years back, there were lots of suicide explosions in Kabul on daily basis. It was not for 1 week, it was for months and years, and we were afraid of getting out from our homes. So it was a very hard time. In that time, I was thinking about how if Afghanistan, how if Kabul was part of the Indian Ocean. Maybe if it was part of the Indian Ocean, it would have another history. Maybe instead of the history of misfortunate human beings, it was the history of fishes. So this idea came. It was like to my mind, and I wrote this poem, the Street of Dolphins. How I wish the sea would come, visit the streets of Kabul, and bring all its fish, no matter what their color. How I wish the sea would rebel and divert its dolphins to our street so that it becomes the avenue of dolphins. How I wish a big sea would rush into the streets of Kabul and force the warlords to swim away. How I wish how I wish the city of Kabul would sink with the ears and all the dams go under and the seaweeds grow from among tanks, hang from the houses' tall windows, and dance among tables and chairs of the restaurants in our submerged neighborhood. How I wish from the very beginning of our ancient past, schools of playful small fish zip in and out of our windows. How I wish our sisters were mermaids and dolphins bore children instead of our mothers. This is another poem about the immigration, and I dedicated this poem to my poet friend Sadiq Muhammad, who is a poet from Iraq. We met each other in 2014 in Iowa. Because at the same time, Kabul and Baghdad, Iraq and Afghanistan were going through the same situation. So that is why in 2015 there was a wave of immigration from all Middle East to Europe. So that's why I wrote this poem. From Kabul to Baghdad to Damascus, for Sadiq Muhammad, Iraqi poet. From Kabul to Baghdad to Damascus, the dead abound, with countless blisters on their feet, and the heartbeat of their children in their ears. The flames of war have licked the Hindu Kush peaks. Tigris and Euphrates are now boiling vats. Wings of angels burn in the Golan Heights. Sadiq, I steel my heart when I see a suckling baby bite his mother's breast to stay alive, or when women carry their pregnant bellies across burning desert sands, or when dogs search for their masters tracing blood through the streets. Our homeland has sweet breeze, yet generation after generation has only felt its cold chill in the fluttering flags. planted above graves. The vineyards are bursting with grapes, yet they are visited only by ghosts. In Kabul, at the end of each week, the dead carry the living to the cemeteries when the stench of the mourners' wounds permits the air. The sight of roadsides white roses draw tears from every eye. The scent of Persian olives bring tears to all eyes. Like you, I saw flames leaping in my sister's eyes and searched countless hospitals to hear my brother's last heartbeats. We saw how they pulled out. We saw how they pulled out bullet-ridden children from under Aleppo's rubbles, and how quickly tears dried up in the world's eyes. Sadiq, we saw everything, saw how on the shores of the Mediterranean they loaded paper boats with the children of Kabul, Baghdad, and Damascus. Tonight, our people sleep side by side on the ocean floor, gazing up at the pale, distant stars. Isn't it enough? It's too much, I think. I will read the last one.
Okay, you can read the last one in Farsi.
Yeah. So I will end with this one. So this is.
I do not read Farsi.
Maybe you will listen to the musicality, yeah, of the language. So this is a poem in 2012, 13. My brother was an interpreter with American soldiers. So when he was coming home, he was bringing lots of uh, videos, photos, stories from the soldiers, how uh, actually, those stories became the source of writing a collection which is called Soldiers. The whole collection is about the soldiers, American soldiers, Russian soldiers. This is an account of the invasions of Afghanistan with about Russian invasion, then US invasion. So this is one of them. It's about an American soldier in a wilderness in the western Afghanistan. So I was in that collection thinking, what is the perception of a soldier in a battlefield? Is he thinking about those big slogans or no? When he is somewhere away from home, the only thing he thinks is family, friends, city. Uh, he misses those things. And I came to this conclusion that all soldiers are victims. All soldiers are victims. They have been pushed by some orders to go fight against the people that they don't know. They see for the first time. That is why these ideas were coming, and I was seeing all of those pictures from my brothers, and I wrote a book about all those thoughts. So, a soldier's letter to his lover. When I was in Kabul, I thought, okay, the lover, where should be the lover of an American soldier? I have heard about the Mississippi River, but I didn't have any idea where it is and how big or small this river is. But I said, okay, let's put the lover in the shore of the Mississippi River. Maybe it will look more romantic and beautiful. So, a soldier's letter to his lover. I don't remember the Mississippi River and its warm sand. What I think is, will the sand of your eyes touch my body again? The black cat in my house can climb into your bed. He doesn't drink, but sits on the sofa and listens to your singing in the kitchen or the bath. It's his voice that comes from the doorway, and you close the door behind him many times in the day. He goes to the park with you, and on the bench licks your fingers, and you massage his neck. He's calmer when the pen comes from your fingertips. The plants we bought harm the flowers while we are out. And if we don't open the windows, Rome's spread their poison. It's called Helmand, a wilderness illuminated at night by thousands of stars. During the day, the sun is so hot as I can hear my blood boiling in my veins. On the verge of this wilderness live hard men. Women move like ghosts through the cornfields. They even hide their faces in front of sunflowers. Men fall in love with these ghosts, and when they are invited to holy war, they leave them alone with sad songs in the fields. Women pass time by looking and touching the plants. They are sad, like when you kiss my photo in the mornings. They don't have photos of their men when they are upset. They work like you, but in the sunny fields, which belong to the snakes as well. They also take care of the herds of children. They work hard in the fields planted with mines by their lovers. And they like the details of life, just like you do. And like in your house, love is like a mist everywhere in the fields. Thank you so much. I will read a short poem, Farsi poem, Persian poem, because to give you a sense of how is our language. It's very musical language. Nowadays, it's very strange. If you see the uprisings in Iran, yeah, the women are protesting about forced hijab, forced scarf, and they get killed on daily basis by one of the most brutal regimes in our region. Actually, I was talking with some American friends that, okay, now maybe there are some apologists for Taliban in DC think tanks, but just think about Iran. In 1979, when the so-called revolution happened in Iran, the clergies came to power. What happened? The Iranian clergies in 1979 are way so sophisticated than the Taliban right now. Taliban are so backward and illiterate. So look, for half a century, the Iranian people are suffering from a brutal dictatorship. So just this would be the prospect of Afghanistan with Taliban in power. Maybe they will be for 60 years. Maybe they will turn powerful. They will turn another problem for international security and particularly for the US. So let's forget about the politics. Unfortunately, when I was talk about the poetry that journalist comes out of me, and So when you look to the protests in Iran, they are all rhythmic. They have rhymes. You cannot find, they are like hundreds of like those slogans the people are chanting in Tehran streets. They are all have rhyme. So this music comes, it has like with the poetry, with our Persian poetry, and it has a 1,000 years old history. That is why our language is very musical. However, my poetry is not like, it is free verse. It is not those classical forms that has rhyme, but maybe you will like the musicality. گاو تنبل نسل از پی نسل شیر داده است کو صخره ها را اینجا جای پای نسل های از سنگ است که در سراشیب ها گم شدند. سنگریزه های بیحال را هم شیر داده است، سنگریزه های را که بادهای ملایم و حرکت گیاهان نازک بیجا می کنند. گاو تنبل پا بر جاست که هزاران سال جم نخورده است و هزاران سال است که سنگ های جوانتر گروه گروه پا به فرار میگذارند در سراشیب ها. Thank you very, very much for your patience.
May we open up a Q&A and ask you anything?
For sure, if it is not boring.
Can I ask you the first question?
Okay.
I'm just very curious because we live in a digital world. And when I think of poetry, I think of poets, I think of somebody with a plume writing. So when you write, do you write with paper and pen or do you write typing? And depending on the method, on the process you use, is the product different? Does it affect the art?
I think no. I think it depends on what you used to. When I started first writing poetry, I was writing on notebooks, but I was okay. Now I am writing on my computer, and now it's okay. At first, it was not very easy, but I shifted, and it was possible. I don't think it's like harmful for art. It depends how you get used to it.
At what point did you discover your talent? Is this something that you've had since you were really young? You've been writing forever? I mean, you're so young, like, and you've accomplished so much.
Thank you so much.
So at what point did you?
As a poet, I think it is not a good thing to feel accomplished. You know, you have always, it is good to feel that you are defeated. You are not still have your last, you have not written your last poem. And you don't, because there is no last poem. Everybody dies before he writes his last poem. But with this feeling, if you go with this feeling, you will produce something valuable. I didn't believe in my poetry that it's a good poetry unless until I won this prestigious award, and I thought, okay, it's not bad. So it is a common experience between all artists. You know, they don't feel they are successful. Maybe they will fail in some point, but when people, audience admire your work, when that trust comes, you know, that self-confidence, that okay, you're doing something valuable, keep pushing. That is my experience, and it took me a long time. I was not from those genius poets that when they start, they come with a huge thing. You know, it is in critic books that that extraordinary thing happens in the first, or in the middle of your work, or at the end. It depends. For some poets, like William Blake, he wrote his best poem when he was 14 years old. But for some, like Charles Simic, one of my favorite American contemporary poets, he says that for the rest of my life, I was thinking that I'm writing rubbish. But he won the Pulitzer Prize, and now he is one of the best poets. So this feeling of like not being good is always with you, I think. Even if you win a prestigious award, it doesn't change that fear that you have. Maybe I will fall down. Maybe it's the last period of this trip.
As you were presenting your wonderful presentation here, many questions came to my mind. And first of all, I thought about the expression of the thoughts through language. 7,000 languages in the world known to man. Who knows, maybe there are more. And you picked two of them, Farsi and English, to express ideas. But what impressed me most is the kindness through which you discuss the Taliban. You don't have hate in you. from what I hear. There is a kindness. And I don't know how he managed to do that, because I haven't been to Afghanistan, but I read what these people do to women, how they trap them inside the shadows, and women cannot even cross the street because they cannot see through these things that they wear. And yet, you consider them as humans, part of the society, and there is hope. I would like to know you.
It's a good question. Actually, when I published my book, there was this discussion about some of my poems and these discussions were because of that neutrality, because I was not speaking my own thoughts. I was going through the thought process of a Talib, a suicide bomber, and a Russian soldier. For example, I have a poem about a Russian soldier who is lying injured in a pit surrounded by 80s mujahideen who are fighting against Russian invasion. And in that moment, I'm not trying to talk on behalf of him. I'm trying to understand him. What is going through his mind in that situation? The same goes with the Taliban, for example. I don't like Taliban at all because I have been subject to their. I was imprisoned for 2 days. They put me in a cell with 5 other criminals, and so I have seen the brutality of those people, how dangerous they are. But at the same time, when I come to have my narrative about all human beings in that country, I try to be objective, towards my narrative, towards my account. I'm trying to understand them because at the end of the day, all of them are victims of their ignorance, because they haven't been at school, they haven't have proper education, they have experienced severe poverty, they have been taken to Pakistan madrasas, religious schools. Why the families were sending them? Because the families couldn't afford 8 people at the family to feed them properly. They were sending their sons to Pakistan to the religious schools at least to get enough food. So when they come back, they come with an ideology, which is very dangerous. Sometimes I put myself, if I didn't have the chances to get modern education, if my family sent me to those madrasas, what would happen to me? I would be one of them. Human beings are like, when they got burned, they are like this blank papers. There's nothing written in their heads and minds. They learn from the society, from the school, from their surroundings. So that is why, in some points, I see this brutality. I see it is dangerous. It hurts me and my family and my country. But at the end of the day, they are also victims of war themselves. If they took education like me, I'm 100% sure they would think like me. No one born with ideology,
One last question. When you were reciting the poem in Farsi, you mentioned the word tambali twice. What does it mean?
Which word?
Tambali.
Tambal, yeah. It means lazy. Yeah.
In Greek, we say tembeli.
Actually, I will finish with a beautiful story about Greece and Afghanistan. We have a famous song. I talk about this to Athena. It is very famous. It is more famous than our national anthem. Why? Because there is not a consensus about our anthem, because it's in Pashto and the Farsi speaker says, no, it's not belong to us. But there is consensus about a song which came from Greece. You know Theodorakis, you know, he's very famous in Greece. Theodorakis made a song and Maria Ferrantore sang it. The famous revolutionary song. In those 70s and maybe 80s, that song came to Afghanistan. And a man with a big voice put a patriotic song, poem on it, and he sang it. And this is one of the most beloved contemporary songs of my country. So this is how I connected with Greece. And of course, I knew Kazantzakis, Zorbadagri, and Retsos is one of my favorite poets. And of course, the center of philosophy, civilization, literary criticism, everything starts from Greece. However, Greece is not a powerful country in terms of economy, but all European, not European, all the world is in debt of the Greek philosophy, art, and ancient culture. So this is the end. Thank you so much.
Exactly. You're gonna stay late.
Okay.
You're gonna earn your money today. You said you were a journalist, right?
Yes.
But you're writing poems.
Yes.
Do you find yourself ever thinking about writing a book?
Sorry?
Writing a book.
Yeah.
Like
Have
a
you ever
novel.
thought of writing a book?
I have published a novel, and actually I'm trying to write a book, a non-fiction book about the days that the republic collapsed into the hand of Taliban, and I've been witness to all aspects of it. You know, as a very ordinary citizen with my family, what's going through us, and as a journalist who was like, after before 1 week we had a meeting with the president in presidential palace. So 1 week before the collapse, and I have been like, I was in Doha talks. I met Taliban negotiation team, our Republic negotiation team, Zalmay Khalilzad, who was running the whole show. So we met all of them with a group of other journalists. So I have been close witness to all what has happened.
We're gonna find out. You're gonna write it.
I have lots of things to talk about.
When are we gonna find out you're gonna finish it?
So,
And you're gonna tour here.
Yes,
in
yes,
another
yes.
kind of book.
yeah, I hope.
How did you manage to get out of Afghanistan and to the U.S.?
I will write it in my book, you know. It's my story, my book. Yeah, I first came, I was for 2 days in prison. So there was a huge interference from reporters with the border from in Europe, in many countries, and journalists in Afghanistan. I was released. But after that, I was for 1 month in Kabul. Then after that, I went to Pakistan. I flew to Pakistan, then from to Turkey to Albania, then to US. So it's a long trip. And it took me more than 6 months. Like I was for 6 months in Albania, very close to Greece.
So before I jump to my question, I am from Albania.
Wow, why you didn't say it before?
So I could understand some of your points of the sad aspect of your poems, because since I was 7 years old, we had to live bad things with communism. So it really traveled me back to my childhood, and that was very nice of you.
Thank you.
Also, I have a question regarding the language that you are writing your poems, because after traveling and speaking more than one language, is it easier for you, the first thought to come, I'm going to write a poem on Farsi or in English? How do you express yourself better? because always is a translation, right? But when you are translating a beautiful poem, maybe the meaning is lost in from the word.
Yeah, of course. I write in Farsi, but the good thing about my poetry is very imagistic. You know, in terms of static, it's a little technical thing. But if you see the, for example, imagism movement in America, like Israel Pound poetry, when you have an image, or for example, Japanese haikus, you know, if you read them, almost the same in every language. Why? Because you're like a photograph. Like it is very easy to bring them from one language to the other because it is very objective. My poem has very objective images. It is not very subjective. The subjective poetry is very difficult to get translated into other languages, but mine is easy. And I'm writing in Farsi, but I have lots of. It's my dream to be able to write in English. Maybe I will write some of the best books if I learn English. Bestseller.
I just want to mention, Mujib doesn't self-translate. He's been translated. So
Yes.
self-translation in the translation world is very different when you self-translate and when you're being translated. So the English words are not his words.
Yes.
He was translated at the University of Iowa.
Yes, and by two translators. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question. May I ask a question? Because we do book club here, and we did Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So we spoke about the Harlem Renaissance in the U.S. And when you read the poem about the soldier's love letter, and you mentioned the Mississippi.
Yes.
Whenever I hear the Mississippi in poetry, I always think of Langston Hughes. I mean,
he is my favorite, you
there
know.
you go.
Yes, of
There you
course.
go.
Actually, he has a beautiful poem. America was never America
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was translated by an Iranian, like the biggest contemporary poet, Ahmad Shamlu, which I won the award. He is like the biggest contemporary poet. He was nominated for Nobel Prize, but he didn't win it. He didn't win. So he translated the poem, and it is now a very popular poem. But in translation, it was a little change that it was like America was never America to me. But in his poetry, it is like this country was never my country. So
Right.
it made it, it universalized it by changing the name of America. So it is very famous. Langston Hughes is very famous in Persian world. He's one of the most famous poets.
Why do you think, what is it that speaks to the Middle Eastern people? Because the Harlem Renaissance was in the 1910s, 1920s in New York, right? So it was a group of people, African Americans, who said, this is who we are, this is how we speak, this is how we write, love us or leave us. So it was a very powerful movement. Is it the movement that speaks of the people in the Middle East? Is
No,
it
I
the
think that
language,
the
images?
common pain, you know, that sense of inferiority towards dominant culture that Langston Hughes is protesting against. You know, he's talking about the black people and their rights and their deprivations from their rights in America, about the slavery. He's talking about the history of slavery. That is what attracts our people, because we have the common pain. You know, we are sharing the same pain. Wherever there is separation, oppression, the people are feeling the same. So when you're a black in early 20s in America, or you're a man, a Kurd in Middle East, or you're an Afghani in Afghanistan. So the pains are the same.
So Hughes likes to refer to rivers. You use a lot of the river imagery. What does the river mean to you?
Oh, river is beautiful. River is the sign of life, you know, the sign of eternity. It goes forever, you know. The sign of art, you know, the sign of artwork. Poetry is like this, you know, it goes forever. Unlike our life, which is very short. So that's why you can find river image in our poetry a lot, from classics to moderns. Some of the best poems are about the river, or have used the river as a metaphor. There are lots of them in Persian poetry. Okay, thank you so much. I think, thank you so much. I enjoyed a lot.